Good morning, Robert Scribbler. It is July 18th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now for this segment, I'm going to talk about a couple of things, but the first thing I want to do is to address a good deal of contrarian pushback that tends to come in response to the renewable energy revolution, and in particular to the clean energy vehicle revolution. And what I'm going to do is walk you through the benefits of electrical vehicles for transportation emissions. And what we're looking at here is a graphic that is provided by Nissan, which shows the various levels of emissions reductions that can be achieved based on current use technology for electrical vehicles. And what we see in this graph is what's needed to achieve a reduction in global emissions to the point that atmospheric CO2 levels are stabilized at 450 parts per million carbon dioxide. That's not carbon dioxide equivalent, that's carbon dioxide total. And what vehicle transportation needs to achieve in order to become a part of that goal. Now that's not to say that other emissions reductions are not also needed, but it's what's needed from vehicles to achieve that goal. There are other goals that need to be met, but vehicles, because there are nearly 1 million internal combustion engine vehicles worldwide, and there's transportation, and vehicle transportation produces a lot of carbon emissions. Vehicle carbon emissions need to be addressed. And it's one of the more serious aspects of carbon emissions. And so this is the level of emissions that need to be reduced. We need a 90% reduction in vehicle carbon emissions by 2050 in order to allow vehicles to contribute to this goal. And here are changes that can be made in present technologies in this first line. So if you look at the arrows here, if you just do an immediate switch to, say, for example, high efficiency internal combustion engine, you can achieve about a 25% reduction in carbon emissions. And if you switch to hybrid vehicles, you can achieve about a 45% reduction in carbon emissions. And if you switch to all electric vehicles just immediately right off the bat, mated to traditional grids, you achieve more than 50% reduction in carbon emissions. And that's the greatest reduction, and this is wells to wheels reduction. This is including the production of electrical vehicles and their use. And if you switch to hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, you achieve a 40% reduction initially, because the cost of reforming natural gas into hydrogen has a high carbon emissions cost. Now, once you get to these initial reductions, you kind of get stuck when it comes to internal combustion engines and hybrid vehicles. There's a plateau in carbon emissions production due to the nature of the technology. There are no real additions in carbon emissions reductions that can be achieved. So if you're going to achieve the 90% reduction for vehicle transportation, you need to do more. And what are the two technologies that are capable of doing more? There's hybrid fuel cell vehicles that use hydrogen fuel cells and electrical vehicles. And both of them, if you further the technology, so if you mate electrical vehicles with wind and solar, then you reduce electrical vehicle wells to wheels carbon emissions by 95%. And if you use renewable hydrogen for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, then you also reduce carbon emissions by 95% or more in both of these cases. So what are the technologies that are available now? Do we have electrolyzers presently that are capable of producing renewable hydrogen on a mass scale? The answer for that is no. Do we have affordable and easily accessible hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that are mass produced? And the answer is no. On the global system, perhaps 3,000 to 5,000 hydrogen fuel cell vehicles will sell this year, and there's really very little in the way of infrastructure that supports hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. But turning to electrical vehicles, we find that mass production of electrical vehicles is happening now. And wind and solar provide pure renewable energy. So electrical vehicles can make this leap to more than 95% emissions reduction, wells to wheels emissions reduction now. And companies, various companies around the world are like BID and BMW and Tesla and Nissan are mass producing these electrical vehicles. And over time, these electrical vehicles have seen rapid increases in capability and affordability and overall quality. Now, this is also in addition to the fact that electrical vehicles produce zero tailpipe emissions, so they don't contribute to local smog. And when they're linked to renewable energies systems, they also do not contribute to regional smog as well. So, what are the choices that are available now? If we're against a hard line with human-caused climate change, and we're dealing with the effects of human-caused climate change now, and we're looking at catastrophic consequences if we don't reduce our carbon emissions, then what we are looking at, if we're looking at a solution that is available now, we're looking at electrical vehicles. So that's why I talk a lot about electrical vehicles. One, because transport is a major contributor to carbon emissions, and two, because electrical vehicles provide a solution that is available to us today. Now let's going to see how much more time we have. We don't have a lot of time. I was going to talk about something else in this segment, so I'm going to break this up into two segments. But what I will say is that those attacking electrical vehicles right now are attacking a critical portion of the clean energy transition and a necessary response to climate change. And these include CEOs that do not want to change their business models, shareholders that see present profits threatened, and politicians that are beholden to those monetary interests. Now, monetary interests are not necessarily human interests or public interests. And what I am speaking for is the public interest, and as it relates to the threat posed by human-caused climate change. And from a rational observer, the transition pathway is available, and from a moral observer, it's one that we should pursue. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.